Long time no see.
Okay, I'm totally. You didn't do the whole intro. I don't know what to do now. It's been the same intro for like
a little bit.
Oh wow!
Welcome back to the Sweet Spot, where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Holton and Paul Lewis.
There we go. That's regular.
So, any travel in international, local, to the grocery store? Any snow?
I've been to UK twice in the last month. Enjoyed it both times because I didn't have to get tested either way. It was awesome. It was just like getting on a plane and getting off and getting on a plane and getting off. It was amazing.
Wow. Did you have to wear a mask though?
Nope. Well, on the plane, yes. But
yeah.
As soon as you get off the plane in the terminal, it's maskless.
Wow. Did Trump win an election in Europe, in England? Like, did I miss? Is he now the totally sweet PM?
Nope, they've just evolved. Boris has evolved. So there's no testing, no quarantine, no isolation. Wow. There are still people who choose to mask, of course, but it is definitely not a requirement. I also, in my last trip, had to travel to a town that was an hour and a half, give or take, outside of Bristol. So I had to go from London on a 2-hour train ride and then an hour and a half car ride to a little town that had 500 people, 450 of which worked for the organization to which I was meeting with.
You didn't fly into Birmingham?
There wasn't an easy connection to do so, and I was in London for most of the other reasons.
Yeah. I had to go just outside Bristol as well. Last time I was in the UK for my one day, which was a horrible trip. So it's a one day. I'm going from the Netherlands to Bristol. I fly into Birmingham, and I'm just bringing a backpack. Right, I've got one change of clothes, meds for 2 days, an extra pair of underwear, and my laptop.
Right.
Everything else is at my hotel in the Netherlands.
Right.
Now, if you're following along in the play at home game, you kind of can see where this is likely going. Because as soon as you land, I'm boarding a plane the next day, I have to test for that flight.
Right.
So again, you can likely see where this story is going. Otherwise, it would just be a boring story of going on a commuter flight.
Right.
I test positive.
You test positive. Nice.
So of course, I freak out. And it's an invisible line.
Right.
Like the tests, technically, if you shine it in the light, you'll have a dull area. Okay, well, that's technically positive. So I'm like, okay, well, this is stupid. Let's take another one. So they had another test, right? This one didn't have the QR code to upload it and have AI analyze it. Like it wasn't an official test, but I took the test, figuring if I'm positive, I got to go quarantine for 2 weeks, and they literally have to send the maid to box up my shit and FedEx it to me in another country.
Right.
So I take the other test, and everybody's on pins and needles, and I'm sitting in the lobby. You know what I mean? And it's clean, and I went, okay, cool. And they sent someone to go get another one of the official QR-coded tests, right? So then I take that test, and it's clean, right? And all I can figure is, I don't know, maybe I didn't wash my hands before I did the test or something.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty close to a really, like I'm a 45-year-old dude at this point, and and I'm diabetic. I take medication a couple times a day. And sometimes it's difficult because it's a liquid, so I don't always drag it all with me when I go, for one day. Right. So yeah, it was a little tense there for a little bit. And the worst part was, as soon as I got the positive test, I did what I thought was responsible, and I called HR and said, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
They said, take another test. But they immediately started calling everyone to let them know, hey, we've had a positive test. So every single person that I spent the prior week with is now being tested in panic and chaos mode, right? Yikes. And as soon as I look at my messages, I have 63 text messages and 145 team chats going, hey, are you dying? Right? The whole time I'm going, oh, my wife is going to kill me.
I don't know. Let's assume you had all your stuff. Like 10 days in the UK probably isn't that bad of a deal.
But you're not allowed to leave the hotel room.
That's true.
Right? They better put me in a hotel with a really nice view.
A nice view and some sort of open door you can get out to.
And the worst part was there was no Marriott in the immediate vicinity, so they were just going to extend my stay at the castle we were staying at, which looked like a castle from Harry Potter. Like, it was a beautiful location, but it's not a Marriott. I get no points for that. I don't want to spend 10 days getting no points. That just seems awful.
You would have had to move to Bristol, because I stayed in a hotel in Bristol, and it was a Marriott Royal Bristol. It was nice.
Oh, that would be nice. Yeah, I guess I could have made it work.
It was castle-like.
You went through all that. How do you start looking at life now versus all the work and travel and everything that you experience on a day-to-day?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because this has been coming up a lot. I think all of us as leaders have likely been hearing more and more and being involved in or being hit by the splash damage from this thing called the Great Resignation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't really care if you call it the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle, the Great whatever you want to call it. Right. There are some facts that are important. The first is people are retiring at about twice the rate we expect them to. Right. So we're losing a lot of people from the tail of the workforce. Right. At the same time, we have a different attitude from the nose of the workforce, from the first big swath of the workforce. And it's making it very hard to hire. Additionally, like I said, I'm 45, right? So while I guess technically I should be about halfway through my career, assuming the goal, you start working at 25 after you graduate college, you retire at 65 after, working your life. And that's kind of ideal retirement age. I don't really feel like that. I feel like I'm moving into that kind of retirement focus. And, as I study kind of what are some of the triggers of the Great Resignation, one thing keeps coming up, and that is the generations that came after us, right? That came after Gen X are a huge transition. You could argue we're a transition generation, but we're also a very small generation in comparison to those before us and those after us, right? It's effectively 5 to 2 to 5 in the US. I don't know what the statistics are in the rest of the world. I can't imagine Canada is substantially different.
Close-ish.
Otherwise, they likely would have been a point of conversation. So 5 to 2 to 5 means Gen X kind of vanishes a little bit. Right? We're not going to have an overwhelming presence in government. We're not going to have an overwhelming presence in running corporations, right? The boomers are likely to hold on, as the first truly long-lived generation. They're likely to hold on longer and longer to their pieces of power. And it's likely with the 5 to 2 to 5, it's likely to kind of skip us, right? But it also has me kind of being a little introspective and looking and going, why is some of this happening? And the reason some of this is happening is because the generations that came after us, right? I'm just gonna call them millennials for purpose of this conversation. They're not technically,
it includes all of the letters.
3 or 4 generations in there, or 3 or 4 designations in there. They have a different attitude to work than we do. We're the last generation that really lives to work, right? Where your job and the work you do is central to your very identity.
True.
And I think I've talked about this a little bit before in the nationalism thing, right? Nationalism is not central to the kind of millennial-ish generation's identity either. And it really has me firmly believing we're doing it wrong.
We
right?
being our generation, or we being
our
individuals?
generation, we being people as a whole, right? We never were supposed to, live to work. We're supposed to work to live, not the other way around, right? There's a joke I love, and it's guy goes down to Mexico and meets this wonderful kind of older gentleman, and they're talking. And the guy says, I don't understand. Why do you you get up in the morning, you fish for 3 hours, and then you don't really do anything. Why don't you work? And he said, well, if I worked, what would happen? And he said, well, you work like the rest of us, put in your 40 years, and then you get to retire. And he looks around
to go fishing
in a house on the beach and spend your day fishing.
Right.
And it just kind of, all of that kind of combines to really make me kind of think about that. And from a leadership standpoint, right, you can't demand people go where you want them to be. Like that's the crux of the Great Resignation, right? People going, I'm not putting up with this crap anymore because I don't have to, right? You kind of have to come to where your audience is, whether that's your customer, whether that's your employee, whether that's your boss, right? You're the one that's required to be flexible because you're the only one that can control the flexibility on that side of the equation. It's the only side of the equation you control the flexibility in. So if you've got people that no longer live to work, but rather work to live, how do you change your hiring practices? How do you change your job descriptions? How do you change how you sell the company? How do you change your culture? And how does that affect the way you think about it yourself?
And how do you, like, even in a micro perspective, how do you think of tenure differently than you used to? Right. So now, should you expect 1 year turnaround for people instead of 10-year turnaround for people? Then how does that change how you even promote people or how you expect, growth or education to occur in your organization? And then if you know that, a significant portion of your team will be displaced on an annual basis, like not 25, but closer to 50 or 60, how do you even operate without some sort of consistent thing, whether that be documentation or process or training or something? It's a whole new way of operating IT.
Well, and like you also have to kind of look at your bell curve, right? Not to be ageist, but you have to look at the bell curve so you kind of have an understanding of where people are in their careers, right? And where do you skew? If you skew 55, right, you need to have a completely different strategy than if you skew 33,
right,
as an example, right? And if you skew 33, right, then yeah, you probably want to assume people are a little bit more mercenary, and then it's really people still are going to go somewhere, right? So if they're going somewhere else, the grass sure seems greener on the other side. Is there some low-hanging fruit you can do to kind of pull down and help fertilize your grass and make your grass a little nicer? Right. I just did an interview for someone going in a organization parallel to my organization. Right. Lots of interaction, but didn't actually work for me.
Right.
And I did the panel interview, and to call it an interview, it was not an interview. She had multiple offers already. Right. The hiring manager determined this was the person that he wanted. So barring any huge red flags, this was not a go no go kind of situation. This was a help me recruit this person kind of situation.
Right. A reverse Shark Tank.
Right. So that's what we did. We reverse Shark Tanked her. Why do you want to take money from us?
Right.
It's like that decision in Shark Tank where you have 4 offers and they literally go through selling themselves against the others. I don't know who the others are, so I can't say, I'm far better than Mr. Fantastic. I mean, other than his money, I'm far better than Mr. Fantastic. but I can't actually say that because I don't know who the Mr. Fantastic is in this case, right? So all I could really do is talk about what is our culture? Like, what are you walking into? What does it feel like to kind of be here, to come here, to show up, to be part of this team? And a big part of that isn't just the good. A big part of that is, kind of the negatives. Yeah, we work a lot of hours. Yeah, no 2 ways about it. We're understood.
Honesty is important.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, when something breaks, no one gets fired. There's no head calling. No one gets fired. No one gets yelled at. We just kind of go, okay, could we have prevented it? And what do we do to prevent it in the future? Right? Can we use this as a moment to improve? That's a pretty nice piece of culture. Right? I have nobody. I should rephrase. I have no concern about a 3-year tenure. I have the opposite concern. I have people that are, my average tenure is like 8 or 9 years.
Right.
And I lost, I think, 3% during COVID.
Which is not big enough.
No, I did. I lost 0% before that.
Right. Which is even worse. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I have none of those issues. I have other issues. Don't get me wrong. It's there's no such thing as a perfect culture, but every day, right, I'm on the phone with HR going, hey, how can we improve our pipeline? How can we grow? How can we, what are we providing for people? How are we communicating? And if we do this for a new hire, what are we doing for the existing people, right? How does all of this work as a cultural ecosystem to not only recruit, but retain and promote and upskill and reskill and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah. And long tenures guarantee in many ways lack of skills.
Correct. There is There is you cannot be both long tenured and buying of capabilities.
Right.
Right.
But your philosophy starting in this conversation was seemingly the reverse, in that your philosophy / goal here was not to acquire sort of millennials into your organization, but that you should change as an individual person to be more like millennials.
Oh, absolutely.
So what are you doing, either with your leadership philosophy or even with your career, to say, I'm now going to think like this? I'm now going to think in 1 year tenure. I'm going to now be less attached to my organization. Like, what are the other things, and what should we be doing?
I'm taking an extra step to point out, because you meet with your team all throughout the week, right? So I'm taking an extra step, and on Thursday and Friday I say very specifically, hey, I've given you homework. You're not to do it over the weekend.
Right.
This is regular business hours homework. If I see someone logged in on a Sunday, we're going to talk about it on Monday, and you're going to have to explain why you thought it was smart to do that on a Sunday.
Unless you're taking Monday off.
Even then, do it on Tuesday then. It's regular business hours work. I didn't need it on Monday.
Right.
Do I set reasonable expectations with my team, or are my expectations arbitrary and putting them in a position where they have to do, work over the weekend? Right. And I think little steps like that, right? And then I go through that in my one-on-ones, right? Okay, what are you doing with your team to make sure they're not doing that? Right? What can we remove that are barriers that keep your team from, normal business hours work? Right? And some of it's an uphill battle, right? Sometimes you just have 10 pounds of shit at 5 pound sack, and you can't really, I can't really do anything about it, right? The stuff is coming down the hill at a rate faster than I can shovel it out of the way.
Right.
So yeah, I got to work some extra hours. Okay, but how are we maximizing that time? How are we, or maximizing the value of that time, minimizing the waste? Because if you got to work, if you get people working 60, 70 hours a week, what are you doing to make sure that they understand they're appreciated? What are you doing to make sure that they understand that, help is coming? And what are we doing to bring help? Right. And another big piece of conversation, right? How do I analyze it to go, hey, I'm not providing a good quality of work. I'm not providing a good quality of life for my people. What can I do to solve it?
Yep.
Let me ask you a different question. If with what you're saying, will you consider then bringing more consultants, that because that they're going to be moving, they have then, I'm going to call it, niche down in what they're going to do? So then you can count that they say, okay, these guys that I'm bringing are specialists, I don't know, in web design, and these other ones are in development for databases. So they, even though they can move, their skill set is honed, so you can get probably a better ROI from their skill set to help the company with the projects.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of outsourcing, but I do like kind of the borrow methodology, right? Rather than buy, right, and outsource, I like borrow. I like, let's bring in some experts for some period of time and assign them as kind of a mentor-mentee relationship to upskill my people. Right? That way I get the capability today from the consultant, and long-term I'm upskilling and reskilling my people into something that they're interested in or willing to do, right? Sometimes you have people that are hardcore. I work to live, and therefore I don't really care about any of this stuff. I'll be as good as I need to at it so that I can get on to what I really care about on my off time. Right. And I think that's okay. Not everybody has to be a diehard technologist, be diehard passionate about the work they do, to be good at it. Right. But bring in a consultant to provide the immediate capability, and as part of that relationship, the goal is to make us freestanding. The goal is to teach us how to fish and make sure that we're fishing properly, and then walk away while we continue to fish.
So, and some of that's outcome versus purpose. So exactly as Howard said, let me borrow outside expertise in order to create value inside my organization. But instead of the outcome being that my company now has skill sets, don't make that be the purpose. Just make that be the outcome. Make the purpose be, I want to upskill Susan and John. And from their skill sets, make the company better. Right? Make that the secondary device, not the primary device.
Right. If the primary device of bringing a consultant is migrate to the cloud, right, that's the secondary function. The primary function is make insert name of your company capable of migrating themselves to the cloud by migrating wave 1 to the cloud with a heavy consultant. Wave 2, you flip the role. Right. It's 70-30 consultant company, and then it's 30-70 company consultant, or you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Flip it.
But knowing that in 24 months, you'll want to do that again, right? Because new skills are now created externally that you want to bring internally, and you want to go through that process again just to reinvigorate the teams with new skill sets.
Correct. And that's very different, I think, than the relationship we traditionally have with consultants. Right. I think that's very different than what we tend to get from, an Accenture, an IBM, an EY, Infosys, or whoever. Right. And I will also say there are some things I'm happy to outsource. Right. I'm happy to outsource help desk.
Yeah. Task
as an example.
Yeah.
Right. I'm happy to outsource desktop support. As an example. Right. I'm happy to at least consider those things and say, does my company derive intellectual property type value from that, right? Am I making the company better through the interactions, or am I providing a commodity type service that therefore can be done by a variety of outsiders?
Yeah, I've heard some CIOs say, "Can I patent it?" And if the answer is yes, I'm going to do it myself. If it's no, others can do it.
That's why I constantly talk about it as intellectual property. Does this contain intellectual property? Is my company weaker if this knowledge leaves? Level 1 help desk? Not really.
Right. I could be the best at the best and still make no difference to the organization.
Architecture and design? Yeah. Governance? Yeah. Right.
So back to the initial premise, other than sort of changing the culture in IT, I wonder if you personally are changing your tactics. So as an example, do you answer emails on the weekends? Do you travel during weekdays instead of during Sunday nights? Do you only work 40 hours versus 60 hours? Like, are those part and parcel of your MO now?
No. I mean, not to the level that I think they need to be. Right. I'm striving to be better. Right. I'm striving to, when I am not working, to be connected, not to the internet, but at home.
Right.
To be present, I think is the correct word. Right. I'm striving that, if my phone rings at dinner, I don't answer it. I don't look at it. Right. If I get a chirp or a chime or a notification, we're having dinner. Right. Be present, be in the moment when I can be in the moment. Right. Schedule fewer things outside of work. And yes, when it comes to travel, try to travel during business hours. Is it always possible? No, not even close. Right. But there have been several times lately where I'm like, I can't make that. I can't get a flight out there for that time. The earliest flight I can get is, 7:30 in the morning on Monday.
Right.
So, or the flight I am getting is at 7:30 in the morning, even if there is an earlier flight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not taking a red eye. I'm not getting up at 3:00 in the morning so I can be in the office at 2 in the afternoon and just be wiped out. Like, you know what I mean? The quality, that kind of quality of life also has to reflect in, I multitask less in meetings. Right. Or there's no point in being in the meeting. Right. Because if you're not going to get quality from me, why have me in the meeting? Right. If I say 3 words and I don't feel thoroughly educated when I leave, there was no point in me being there.
That's right.
Right. And so, can I be more picky and choosy about what meetings I do take? Can I be more picky and choosy about the things that do occupy my time and just say no more often?
We went through the effort recently of declining and resetting every single meeting that had more than 5 people. We just canceled them from the calendars, recreated them again, reassessed not only who should be the attendees, but how often they should occur. Maybe they aren't weekly. Maybe they are, in fact, monthly or quarterly meetings. And then set an agenda that was obviously required that people that were actually going to attend. And that actually cleared at least 50% of my calendar. It was a healthy exercise.
Yeah. I've really started paying attention to whether I'm optional.
Right.
Right. Because there's a lot of stuff where it's like, I don't actually think I need to be in on this. Like, send me the results of the meeting afterwards, because I would like to be informed, and it's probably good that I'm informed, but I don't actually need to be there. Right. And I think this addiction to you didn't reply to my email also needs to go away. You didn't ask me a question. Why do you have an expectation that I would respond and clutter up what you need to do?
Right.
Like, even if you just click and it says thank you, even if you just have to click on it and read that it says thank you and then archive it, that's still 45 seconds out of your day. Do you really need to do something with that? You know what I mean? You didn't ask me a question. You didn't assign me a task. Why should there be an expectation that I would then reply to your email?
Yep, that is fair. And we've worked long enough together to know that if I'm optional in a meeting, that guarantees I'm not going to show up.
Yeah. For anybody,
and I absolutely don't want feedback on the meeting. Do not send me what happened in the meeting, because I didn't care enough to show up. Therefore, I don't care enough to what actually happened.
No, but like the outcome of the meeting might be information that you need.
Right.
You know what I mean? It might be, hey, we figured out how to pay for this thing within the budget by shifting these things around. Cool, great. I'm glad you did that. I'm now aware that we're not doing those things. We decided to shift those out a year.
Right.
You know, a calendar year, fiscal year, whatever word you want to use. You know, I'm good with that. We reprioritize some projects. That's great.
So thinking about what we have said during the program, do you consider that probably your next opportunity or a leader should look into that second step of their next career, not looking as a job, but probably more something that is related to what they like in life? Let's say if they learn technology, but all of a sudden now they love painting, and they have never looked into doing something with painting or whatever it's going to be, should then that person start looking into, like you said, my time, I'm going to focus on doing a great job as a technology leader, but start using my time for that, getting ready for that next phase in their life. So when they decide to take the step, they say, I'm fulfilled.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, I think like right now, I'm also looking at how do I get involved with more charities, right? Charities seem to be horrible users of technology, right? How do I get involved at the board level and go, hey, like, let's start talking about this strategy as one that enables future generations to find you relevant, rather than you're going to die out when, you know, your non-digital clientele, your non-digital patronage vanishes because you're just not reaching a generation. Right. And if art was my thing, if painting was my thing, I would really be focused on how do I volunteer or get on some charity, get on some boards with museum charities that focus in art. Right. I think there's a lot that can be done there. I think there's a lot of experiences. You know, the Van Gogh experience. I don't know if you guys got to see that. It traveled from museum to museum. The Van Gogh experience was wonderful in that my next house, I think, is going to have that room. Right. I just like white on white room, I guess off-white, single bench in the center, probably a hammock, because so I can lay down, and like 6 projectors just projecting imagery and music and nothing else. Right. So I can be like, hey, I got 15 minutes. I need to de-stress, because that's what I found. Like, I didn't find it really helped immerse me in Van Gogh's work as much as it provided a space that contained zero stress for me. Wouldn't allow any of it in.
Get some Meta, the Oculus.
No, I have Oculus, and I don't find it does the same thing. Right? I find just the added weight kind of has, the kind of stress of its own. I just want to be in that space. And there's only 2 of us live in my house. I can easily convert a room.
See, I preferred the Friends experience comparatively, but
yeah, but the Friends experience was fun because I was there with friends.
That's true.
Right? Like that was different. I wouldn't want that in my house.
You wouldn't want the big couch in your house?
Oh, the big couch I'd take in my house, or the chairs. You know what I mean? Like I could see designing, the cafe, for instance, as a bar in my basement. But that's more of a like, ha ha ha, look, I built this thing, isn't this neat? Rather than, a way to de-stress. That was what I got from Van Gogh, and that's what I really liked about it. But I thought it was a really, really cool use of technology in a space that hadn't really thought about what they could do with technology. And I also think they kind of missed the boat a little bit on some of the things they could have done, right? I didn't find it to be overly educational. I didn't find it to be well story-driven. I didn't find it wasn't personalized even in the slightest, right? And I think they have opportunities to do things like that, right? Like, lead me on a journey. It's a big room. Lead me on a journey of Van Gogh, but tell me to stop in the corner of the room that has the art I'm interested in. You know what I mean? Theme the areas and see what happens.
Right.
Right. Like if you have a bunch of people, if you have 12 people in a room of 20 that glom to one corner, all of a sudden change the projectors next to it to expand it and see if you can affect the crowd dynamics that occur within the room.
Right. See
Right.
if you can move the crowd instead of the crowd moving to it.
Right.
That's how
how do you make it like organic? It'd be super interesting to do. It would be an art installation of its own where the audience becomes a piece of the art rather than a display piece. And don't get me wrong, I still think it was a really cool use of technology in an industry that doesn't use technology well.
So I believe, Carlos, to answer your question, from my perspective, that yes, now is a good stage to start your sort of passion project kind of work in your career. However, I don't think I could have done that in my 20s or 30s. Right? So if I look at today's 20s and 30s, I don't think they've experienced what they needed to experience in order to really do and implement this passion, if it requires experience based on their career. If they just happen to be great painters and they want to go back into painting, that's not really required a 20-year technology experience for. But if they wanted to use technology in that artistic experience, I think it in fact does require a decent amount of experience to support that. So while I'm happy sort of moving into a world where I'm less career oriented and more passion oriented, I think it would be less effective if I didn't have the background to support doing it.
Well, I think I'd be less effective.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody wants to be a poor artist. They just want to be an artist. Right? And it's kind of this late stage experience that makes you a valuable artist. Yes, like it's reasonable that I think if any of the three of us decided we wanted to be on the board of, be the technical advisor to a board at a museum, we could likely do that. We have the reputations, the experience to be able to carry something like that off.
Right.
Could I have done that at 23? Not likely.
No.
Right. Can I do
you
that
would have been
now?
full of interesting ideas and have no idea how to implement them.
Yeah. And no one that would listen, right? You'd be screaming in a dark room by yourself.
Right.
Well, I think that we share very interesting detail. That is that there's going to be a time where you need to make the decision. Are you going to continue to work so you can be alive, or you can be alive while you are at work? I think that that's the key. We need to be alive wherever we go. If we're at work, or if we start a new journey, new career, but be alive so you can be present. My friends, been awesome to see you again. Make sure that you share, you subscribe, and we'll see you on our next episode.